Hi, I'm Scott Olson, co-founder of LTCshop.com and author of Long-Term Care Insurance Now. So what other half-truths did the New York Times publish in their 2023 article on long-term care insurance? Well, about halfway through the article, they used this phrase, savvy consumers. The entire sentence reads, insurance industry officials also failed to account for the behavior of savvy consumers determined to keep their long-term care insurance coverage. Insurers counted on policy lapse rates, people giving up their policies or defaulting on payment, of about 4% per year. The actual lapse rate was closer to 1%. Savvy consumers? Wait. What is the New York Times talking about? They're calling people who are determined to keep their long-term care insurance savvy? Earlier in the article, they say that these policies are wildly inadequate. How can the New York Times make both statements in the same article and say that both statements are true? How can someone be a savvy consumer keeping a wildly inadequate insurance policy? That doesn't make sense. Come on, New York Times. Just tell it like it is. Well, both statements are half true. You can't understand the whole picture until you understand what the New York Times article left unsaid. Namely this: the reason they concluded the private insurance market has proved wildly inadequate is not because the policies are bad. It's because most people don't buy the policies. Most people don't own long-term care insurance. And if more did, it would be adequate. It wouldn't be wildly inadequate. According to the most recent industry survey, there's about 7 million people in this country who own private long-term care insurance. Now, according to KFF.org, that's the Kaiser Family Foundation, who partnered with the New York Times to publish this poorly researched article, in 2020, according to KFF.org, Medicaid paid 54% of the over $400 billion spent on long-term care services in the United States. 13% of the expenses were covered just by people paying out of pocket, and 8% of the long-term care insurance services in the United States were paid by private long-term care insurance. Now, if the private long-term care insurance industry had only 7 million policyholders and the industry paid 8% of long-term care expenses in the U.S. in 2020, how much would the long-term care insurance industry have paid if there were 70 million policyholders? The math is pretty simple. In 2020, if there were 70 million long-term care insurance policyholders, the private long-term care insurance industry would likely have covered about 80% of the long-term care expenditures in this country. The Times is right. Well, at least half right. The private insurance market has proved wildly inadequate in providing financial security for most of the millions of older Americans because most of them don't own long-term care insurance. The private insurance market would be covering more people for long-term care than Medicaid. As I stated in episode 2 of this series, long-term care insurance policies sold before 1993 were, by and large, horrible. Policies purchased after 1993 were much better. Policies purchased after 1996 were even better. Policies purchased after the rate stability regulation took effect in 41 states are even better. And policies that qualify for long-term care partnership programs are the best policies of all, especially for the middle class. So instead of writing just a half-truth, the New York Times article should have written the whole truth. This is what it would have sounded like. They should have written, It's not that modern long-term care insurance is bad. The modern policies, those purchased after 1996, are great policies with a lot of consumer protections. The main problem with long-term care insurance is that not enough people have purchased the policies. That's what the New York Times should have printed. In episode 5, I'll dig a little deeper and we'll discuss 4 things that the New York Times got right.